Benedettamovie summaries by Zillur. Movies recapped. A 17th-century nun in Italy suffers from disturbing non-secular and erotic visions. She is assisted by a companion, and the connection between the two girls develops right into a romantic love affair. 17th-century Tuscany, Italy. Because the sinister risk of the plague looms over Europe, the sincerely religious 8-year-old novice, Benedetta Carlini, is introduced into the Theatine convent of the Mom of God in Pescia as a bride for Jesus Christ. 18 lengthy years later, as ominous whispers of disputable miracles scandalize the cloistered sisters, a take-a-look at of religion awaits deeply pious Benedetta within the form of bruised, abused, and earthly Bartolomea, a younger lady fleeing her violent father. Now, whereas below the vigilant eye of cynical Abbess Felicita, fleeting glimpses of the forbidden fruit invite a tentative intimacy, ungovernable needs, and intense diabolical obsessions in, and out of the blue, the holy indicators of religion are manifest in Sister Benedetta's physique. However, few can wrestle with guilt and emerge unscathed. Is there an escape from sin when the flesh is the enemy? Greetings once more from the darkness. Filmmaker Paul Verhoeven has lengthy made his cinematic dwelling on the fringes. The Brutality of the Center Ages in Flesh plus Blood, 1985. The Violence and Thirst for Energy by Expertise in RoboCop, 1987. The Buried Darkish Facet, and Different makes use of ice picks, of our persona in Basic Instinct, 1992. Extra thirst for energy mixed with a baffling lack of affection attraction in Showgirls, 1995. And the Unbridled Want for Revenge in Elle, 2016. This newest shows his mastery of nun-on-nun eroticism and the duplicity of non-secular religion. Verhoeven's normal aim is to impress, and alongside together with his co-writer David Burke. This, based mostly on true occasion story, tailored from the 1986 Judith C. Brown Guide, Conceited Acts. The lifetime of a lesbian nun in Renaissance Italy, is a pure match. Benedetta Carlini is delivered to the convent at a younger age by her well-heeled mother and father. The lady claims to have a direct line to God, who delivers well-aimed chook droppings when known as a pawn. Okay, that is simply the primary considerably comical occasion on this movie that appears much less within the documented antics of the actual Sister Benedetta, than in tantalizing at the moment's viewers with the behind-closed doorways sins of the flesh between she and fellow nun, Bartolomea, Daphne Pataki. Portraying Sister Benedetta, Virginie Elvira by no means shies away from the fabric, whether or not it is the stigmata, bedtime play with a specifically carved Virgin Mary statuette, or channeling the voice of God throughout outbursts claiming blasphemy. Felicita, the abbess of the convent, is performed by the all-the-time fascinating Charlotte Rampling. Sister Felicita's actual expertise appears unrelated to problems with God, and as a substitute lies in issues of cash. Due to this, she capitalizes on Benedetta's visions as a type of fundraising, whereas turning away, besides throughout moments of voyeurism, from her different actions and claims. Our early warning comes from Benedetta being instructed upon arrival that, your physique is your worst enemy. After extra goals and visions, and a potential miracle or two, we perceive that nuns are to consider that struggling is the highway to salvation and redemption. An idea that results in one of many extra humorous moments as a sword-wielding Jesus saves Benedetta from a gaggle of attacking serpents. Is there such factor as erotic non-secular satire performed straight? We should assume that Verhoeven has his tongue planted firmly in cheek for this one because it goes past skepticism of faith and on to the morally adrift. Whether or not Benedetta's claims of visions had been true or pretend, Verhoeven is a filmmaker who takes pleasure within the pleasure of nuns, irrespective of how prohibited it is perhaps. We are able to simply by no means make sure whether or not his goal is to show faith or just expose. Manufacturing ended November 2018, and the movie was initially scheduled for launch on the Cannes Movie Pageant in 2019. However, in December 2018, director Paul Verhoeven needed to bear surgical procedure for hip damage suffered because of the set's location, which concerned a lot of hills and climbing. Put-up production in Amsterdam needed to be delayed till June 2019 to permit time for him to get better from his surgical procedure. Nevertheless, subsequent issues from ache treatment induced an intestinal obstruction that led to a life-threatening colon perforation. Thankfully, Verhoeven's spouse urged him to go to the hospital in time. Verhoeven and producer said Ben said agreed to delay the discharge to 2020 to ensure that Verhoeven gets better, and is totally current through the post-production course. Verhoeven nonetheless credits his editor Job ter Berg for ending a lot of the movie on his personal, whereas he himself was recovering and unable to attend. Ultimately, the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic induced the film to be delayed for one more year. The fundamental advantage of a movie is its excessive realism. Certain, uncovered with the instruments of Paul Verhoeven. A movie about religion, energy, manipulation, survival, management, and a splendid portrait of counter-Reformation ambiance, from innocence to religion as a refuge, from the uncover of lust to the darkish facet of an individual appertaining to at least one world. The second advantage may be the impeccable work of Charlotte Rampling as Mom Felicita. Not the much less, the efficiency of Daphne Patachia, remembering, on the first look, Rosalinda Celentano within the ardor of Christ, mixing wildness and profound innocence, pretty simplicity, and fears. About Virginia Efira, her magnificence appears to me the essential software to construct the character. I don't ignore the efficiency, however the magnificence represents simply the axis for give a good portrait of Benedetta. The statue of the Holy Virgin was, I admit, a severe motif to be scandalized. However, in a similar measure, I see its use as a portrait of the misplaced innocence of childhood. I'm conscient that I noticed this movie as Greek Orthodox Christian. The Catholic world, in so many tales, is found in this movie nearly scene by scene. That's the reason why I admired its realism. As a result of its a panel with so acquainted items defining, positive, in well-liked thoughts, Catholicism. An attractive movie, having as sin the not most impressing building of visions. However, positive, the message is the numerous one and the massive gallery of portraits, few like Mom Jacopa being helpful for reminding, as a delicate sketch, not snug truths. The road between good and unhealthy, pure and evil is so skinny, you do not all the time understand you crossed it. Or in this case a personality. And after I say the character I imply, historic determine. In a way, and let me be clear, I used to be not conscious, nor am I after watching the film I dare say, of the actual Benedetta. Paul Verhoeven likes to impress, and I'm sure he did change fairly just a few issues surrounding the fantasy of our titular character. Take that with a grain of salt. Or a Jesus on a cross for that matter. Pun very a lot supposed, and if that offends you, nicely you hire not watch the film until you want to get offended and upset after all. There may be some violence and blood, although essentially the most merciless and hurtful scene occurs off digital camera. Nonetheless simply the considered it. And that I consider as one thing that did occur again then, most likely precisely like that. Not spoiling something by saying that. And likewise not spoiling something by saying there may be various nudity on this. It is Paul Verhoeven. What did you count on? Kudos to the actresses and their greater than courageous performances, with or without garments, excellently performed. The solid typically may be showered in reward. The costumes, makeup results, cinematography, and sound design are working hand in hand, to carry you again. So you're feeling like you might be a part of that timeline. An extremely robust story and one with a bizarre most important character. Can we truly sympathize together with her? I feel if something were rooting extra for her lover, that being mentioned, the film is kind of essential of virtually everybody, however primarily the church. Generally delicate, generally brazenly going after issues that had been practiced again within the day. Additionally, how the general public perceives issues generally as a good or a nasty factor. However, we knew that, did not we? And with that, I say, get pleasure from, and consider no matter you wish to consider. A Paul Verhoeven film about nuns? Do I have to say extra? Effectively, maybe. After all, we get our fair proportion of nude nuns minus, on this occasion, these large weapons and a copious quantity of affection and violence. However, that is no low-cost exploitation image, even whether it is unlikely to receive the Vatican's good housekeeping seal of approval. Verhoeven's Benedetta does not simply sail near the wind, however, to Christians, and to Catholics particularly, is positively sacrilegious. It is the story of a nun, Benedetta, in 17th-century Tuscany, Virginie, Africa, whose devotion, first to the Virgin Mary, after which to Jesus, takes, let's consider, considerably excessive varieties. As a bride of Christ, Benedetta sees him not simply as an imaginative and prescient but very a lot within the flesh, and tends to take her wifely duties actually, although she can also be inclined to dally in her extra-earthly sphere with one other nun, Daphne Pataki. Naturally, this leads Benedetta into all kinds of hassle with the church authorities. Verhoeven tends to take all of this pretty critically, although the nudity, the violence, the visions, and the swearing do add to a way of jocularity as nicely. It is definitely a terrific trying image with an actual sense of interval, and without the love and violence it may match fairly simply into the class of non-secular epic. There are loads right here we have seen earlier, however equally there's a lot that's each new and surprising, however surprising in a really Verhoevenian form of approach. Even at its most severe I stored feeling his tongue was lodged very firmly in his cheek, definitely by the point we transfer into the territory of The Devils and The Exorcist. The one member of the solid who appears to know precisely what is meant as Charlotte Rampling because the mom's superior, and as soon as once more Rampling merely walks off with the image. Sadly, within the model I noticed, the subtitling was very poor, even to the extent of distorting the that means. What is for certain is that Benedetta is not any Sound of Music, and that is one nun's story unlikely to be proven within the convent anytime quickly. Wow. I think about Paul Verhoeven to be one of my favorite administrators, however I have never completely liked one in every of his motion pictures since Basic Instinct, and that got here out 29 years in the past. His final movie, L, was the one which I completely disliked, so I did not actually know what to anticipate from Benedetta, however it far surpassed the type of median set by default. I used to be not ready for one more Verhoeven masterpiece. At first, I used to be like, okay, gradual tempo, bland dialogue, not a lot type. This might go each method. Then I used to be like, okay, a few of these characters are actually fascinating and a few of this dialogue is absolutely hitting. Then I used to be like, whoa, there are some tremendous intense and actually memorable components on this film, after which it simply stored getting higher and higher and higher, all through to the top. It feels gradual to start out, however it's a superbly paced construct all through, and by the point you get to the second half try to be totally invested. I lately watched the 1994 Euro drama Queen Margot, and ultimately I thought about it as the proper instance of pure drama in cinema. This movie jogged my memory of that one so far as tone, pacing, and efficiency goes, however, it's just like the soiled, vulgar, sleazy sister to that film, thus utterly my sort of film. Most who know Verhoeven know that he has made loads of motion pictures that could possibly be thought about gratuitous. Whereas this one usually delves a lot deep into the realms of affection and violence, it all the time feels it's performed with function, and although graphic and generally surprising, it by no means does really feel gratuitous. A tasteful transfer on his half. Plainly, he nonetheless has the flexibility to learn the room at his seasoned age. The film has loads of twists and turns, and really sturdy performances, primarily from the two breathtaking leads Virginie Efira and Daphne Pataki. Hers is the best in all the movie, in my view. Essentially the most intense, and her character is essentially the most pleasing, pissed, and enticing. Sorry. Co-stars Charlotte Rampling and Lambert Wilson will depart psychological marks with you as nicely, however actually all the solid is phenomenal. It takes loads to shock me, however my jaw has dropped a minimum of just a few instances. Additionally, it will be a criminal offense to not point out that this film has one of many hottest love scenes I've ever seen in a mainstream movie. It deserves recognition for that. Once more, not gratuitous, it feels related and good. Now, not everyone seems to be gonna love this film, primarily as a result of its miles from a feel-good movie, ha ha ha. It is undoubtedly one which calls for a bit out of your soul through the viewing and exhausts it a bit, however, that is the purpose. It conjures that sort of exhilaration. It ought to drain you a bit, simply because it does a lot from its personal characters. In my view, that is completely among the finest movies of 2021 and Verhoeven's greatest within the final 29 years. See it in the event you suppose you possibly can deal with it.